So now that we've got a method for getting the address and a method of using the Google geocode to get the latitude and longitude, particularly the bounding box values, what I want to do is to set up this call to this request. This stops the bounding box JSON, and as you remember, if we just press the get, we actually get the web address that we're looking for, but this would have latitude and longitude in with it. So I'm going to try to call that. I'm going to call this bus bounds because that's what it really is doing. It's finding the bus information for bounding boxes. So let's just write a little function to call that. So def bus bounds, and the data that it's going to need is the max lon, min lon. We could try page and the results per page, but I'm just going to hard code those in the actual function. So here we go, we've got the bus bounds. So what I want in here is the min lat. It doesn't really matter which order I put them in. The min lon, the max lat, and the max lon. This is backwards to the way that I did it, but it really doesn't matter at all. So I'm getting ready to set up this call. Now, if you see down here, when we make the call, each and every time we make a call, where's it gone? There we go. We need the app ID and the app key, and I've sort of put those in their own little dictionary here, so that I can pull those values out when I need them. And I'm going to be needing them now to set up this URI. This is all I'm doing here is setting up a URI. So I'm going to set the values equals to 0. To an empty dictionary. Now I've got to be careful because dictionaries are actually they work in a global fashion. So if I was to change something inside a function, it would affect the global aspect of it. It would change it. So I've got to be very careful. So I'm going to set up instead of just adding to this original values, putting some details on the end of my dictionary here, like max lat and max lon, which is what I really want. I'm going to set up a separate dictionary to handle that, so that I can leave this dictionary intact and not change it. So there we go. I'm going to set up a blank dictionary. So I'm going to put the app ID and the app key in here. So that is, well, let's just copy it from here. App ID, well, let's just type it, it's easier. App underscore ID, and that's going to be equal to the original values, because I don't want them to be changing, for the app ID, and I'm going to be doing the same thing for the app key. So if I just copy that, paste that there, and change ID for key. So I'm creating a separate dictionary, a brand new dictionary. I'm always going to have it empty whenever I come into here. If I didn't, it would keep adding values on, and that would be rather disastrous for our call. And as our program is going to sort of keep looping and looping and looping, you know, you can select as many bus routes as you want. I want to reset this back to 0 each time, or empty it each time. So that's the way to get the app ID and the app key from this dictionary. The next thing I want to do is sort of build the latitude and longitude because I'm trying to build this. So again, if I just typed in 51 -1, just some silly values, 50 -1, and get, we can see the entire call would include the app ID, the app key, max lat, the max lon, the min lat, and the min lon. Now the order here really doesn't matter after the question mark. It really doesn't matter. This is just setting up some variables to be used by another program that we're not in control of. So it really doesn't matter which order I put them in, as long as I give them the correct names. So it's got to be min lat, min lon, so forth. So let's go for it. Values. Max lat equals whatever we passed in, being the max lat, maximum latitude, and if I just copy that and paste, because I'm getting rather lazy, I need 4 of them because I need that bounding box. So max lon is max lon. Now this is why I've used lon instead of lng, because it matches the call that I'm making to the transport API. And this one is min lat and min lon. I have to make a pig's ear of things. So that would be minimum latitude and the minimum longitude. So I've passed in my variables min lat, min lon, max lat, max. Oh, got 2 max lats there. Min lat, min lon, max lat, max lon. There we go. Pass them all in, ready to build my URL. The other thing that I'm going to do is just put some default values in for the page here and the RPP. So let's do that. Values, page equals 1, and values. Now you don't need to include these, they will default. I'm just putting them in for just to show you that you can actually pass values through. So there we go. I've now set up a dictionary which holds all of the values that I require in my parameters in the request URL. So now I'm going to call it so that when that runs, it calls it and returns this information here. This information here, whichever we're playing around with, doesn't matter, it's the same thing. So let's make that call. So first of all, I need to set up whatever is after the question mark, and they are called sort of parameters. Does it say? The query parameters. So I'm going to use that word to help me understand what I'm doing. So I'm going to set the params, short for parameters, is equal to, now we're going to use u because we're using a URL lib. There's another library in here which will take my dictionary. So my dictionary looks rather strange at the moment. It certainly does not match these values here. So what I'm trying to say is it doesn't contain an equal sign. So app ID was app ID colon then the value, and we're needing to join each time. So what's going to happen is that we're going to be putting an equal sign in and an ampersand between every dictionary item that we want on our line, and we can do that by encoding the dictionary. It's going to run through the dictionary, it's going to look at all the keys in the dictionary, and it's going to produce a key and a value and an ampersand to join them. We could do it ourselves, but why bother about that when we have a library which we could do it with? And it's called URL encode, and it is in the URL lib, and don't forget we've used U as a short form for it, URL lib. So what do we need to pass to it? We need to pass our values, the entire dictionary values, and that will build a string which is just this, from app ID all the way down to the end of -1, everything after the question mark. So now we need to build the first part. Okay, we now need to build the domain and the call that we're making and the get sign, the get symbol, which is the question mark. So that's going to be our API. Could be called endpoint, it doesn't really matter. API is a bit shorter to write. Now we are going to make up stops. Now if you remember, we've got stops here. Just noticing that we could add on to the front of all of these domain plus. Okay, so that was something I should have covered in the first part for the call. A domain plus, so I've got the whole URL up to this point here. Okay, so now I've got the whole URL up to that point there if I just use the word stop, root or stops. So my API is going to be, for the bounding box, I needed to use stops. Okay, so this is stops. And what I need to do is add to that the actual call, so I need to put in the bounding box part of the URL. So that would be a /, thinking carefully, because I don't want to end up with a bad one. I think I've already got the / here. We'll come back to that one shorter. So stops, it's going to give me that stops there. So I just need to put in bounding box .json and the question mark. So that is sort of the first part. So now I've got params being the piece after the question mark, and I've got API being the entire URI up to the question mark. So now I'm going to do the same that I did with the Google one here, the Google URL. I'm going to sort of call that and then decode the results. So the way I do that is again the same. I'm going to say that the URL is equal to u.url open, and then I need my web address or the URL, which is API plus the params, and that will call the API, and the API will give me a whole page full of information as a web page looking like this. So I need to be able to read that information, so I need .read on the end of there. Now URL contains all of this, and this is just a string. So I need to convert that string into something more useful, into a dictionary that I can go through as we did before to pick out the bits of information that I need. So I'm going to say my result now equals the JSON.loads, which really means pass the information, and my URL that I passed in, or value that I've got, and then I'm going to return my result to the calling program. And that's it. So now I've created all of this and I have called it, and I've got back all of this and in a format now that I can just go through and pull out the bits of information that I need from it. So on the next one we will learn how to make that call and start putting our program together.